Now, I know that game week 28 isn't even over yet, but there's already plenty to talk about. So here are players to buy and avoid ahead of game week 29. Now, of course, with game week 29 being a blank game week, it's really important to know what fixtures are actually happening, right? We've got 4 games in total. Burnley against Brentford, Luton against Nottingham Forest, Fulham against Tottenham, and West Ham against Aston Villa. One thing I want to say in general is that these fixtures might not be the most exciting, right? But with the way that the Premier League has gone with goals being scored so far this season, I think regardless of what teams are playing one another, it's almost guaranteed that they're going to be a lot of goals. And when you take a look at the clean sheet odds for the game week, this is according to Draft Hound, you can find them in a link in the description below. They're very low across the board, right? Brentford, 31%, and every other team is below 30%. Usually when teams are below 30, I say don't start defenders from those teams, right? And that's pretty much every team with a game. So looking at the fixtures, I think it's going to be a high scoring game week for goals. And why I'm saying that, well, basically, I know there's a lot of debate as to whether you should free hit or not in game week 29. And I think that's entirely contingent on how many attackers you can get into your team. For me, I would be quite worried if I couldn't get a full set of midfielders and forwards starting for me this week. For example, I would personally want to be 3 at the back, either in a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-2 to maximise the amount of attacking players that I have. And I think if you have a low number of attacking players, you should probably free hit in 29. That would be kind of my cutoff, just with the amount of goals that we've seen so far this season. I'll quickly start off just by talking about the defenders and goalkeepers that I actually think are pickable. I think in isolation for game week 29 alone, Flecken is probably the best keeper. When you look at the clean sheet odds, Brentford lead 31% compared to Forest and Tottenham both on 27. And when you look at Flecken, he's, like I said, decent for clean sheet odds and like the stats say, but also pretty decent for saves as well. And when you look at, the other goalkeepers available, he probably offers the highest potential of a clean sheet and saves bonus, the best expected points in my mind, basically. And when you look at the Brentford assets that are available, I would have previously said Reguilon is pickable, but he's missed the fixture against Arsenal in 28 with a hamstring injury, so I wouldn't back him to start as a result in game week 29. And ultimately, there's probably 2 now pickable Brentford players. I know I said 3 there, that's including Reguilon. I think now there's only a couple of pickable Brentford players, so you're not going to be worried about picking, too many. I think Flecken and Tony are probably the 2 you're going to pick, right? So I think you may as well go for Flecken in goal. My favourite defender, I think, for game week 29 is probably Destiny Udogie. Now, of course, Porro is another option from Spurs, but ultimately, I think there's very little to split the 2 in terms of returns so far. And Udogie's a little bit cheaper than Porro, so I think he takes the lead for me. I've personally had him in my team since the start of the season. Whenever I've needed him, he seems to have delivered, whether that be through an attacking return or the odd clean sheet, right? And when you look at the way that Spurs play, Porro, sometimes he plays more advanced when Spurs have the ball than the Spurs number 9, right? That's just the way Postecoglou likes to play his football. And yes, I'll admit, Spurs are not great defensively, right? 22 starts and only 4 clean sheets. But he's got 5 attacking returns. And against Fulham, right, he's got an 11% chance of scoring a goal, according to Draft Hound, and a 13% chance of getting an assist. That's in total, 22%-ish chance of a total goal involvement, which is not too bad, right? And you consider Fulham not the best going forwards, there's a chance that Spurs could keep a clean sheet in that game. So I think definitely if you're looking to pick a defender, I'd put Udogie at the top of my list. Like I said, it's slim pickings for a defender, but I think Alfie Doughty's probably the second best. Again, I think from an attacking perspective, he's decent, and ultimately, there's not going to be many clean sheets to go around in game week 29, right? So you're best off picking the defenders with the best chance of attacking returns. And when you look at Doughty, 9 attacking returns so far this season. He's one of the best defenders in the game from an attacking perspective, right? And I'd also say Nottingham Forest are not the best team for scoring goals, particularly under Nuno, right? So even if they do score against Luton, I don't see them scoring more than a couple, which means he shouldn't get any minus points for goals conceded. And yeah, like I said, ultimately not many clean sheets to go around, so you're best off picking the best attacking defenders, right? And yes, Luton, not the best defensively, but from an attacking perspective, they have no issues scoring goals. In Doughty, he's definitely involved when they do, most of the time. And yeah, I think he's probably Luton's best and most attacking player. So yeah, if I'm looking for a defender for game week 29, I definitely consider Doughty. All right, on to the more exciting players. And I think Heung-min Son is one of my top transfer targets for Game Week 29, whether I'm on my free hit or not, right? I mean, he's one of the best players in the league. Spurs is talisman. He's nailed to start for them, takes the penalties, plays 90 most of the games, and he's playing as their number 9 at the moment, particularly with Richarlison being injured. You look at his stats here, 13 goals from 7.5 XG, you might think, oh, he's horrifically overperforming his stats. But when you look season on season, that's what Son does because he's such an elite finisher. And I definitely say he's a captain shout as well. A little spoiler, I'm going to talk about Watkins later in the video, right? But question marks really, I'd say, on who is the best captain in Game Week 29. Let me know in the comments who you've got your eye on. But for me, I think it's between Son, Toney and Watkins. And obviously Son and Toney, they both take penalties where Watkins doesn't. Obviously Douglas Luiz is the pen taker for Villa. And I'd always think when I'm picking a captain in an FPL game week, I always want to pick a player that takes penalties because regardless of how they play or how their team does from open play, they've always got a chance of scoring if they take penalties. So with that in mind, I definitely think Son is a fantastic option. Next up, I think you've got to consider James Maddison. Even though he's not been in the best form since returning from his injury, I think Fulham away is a really decent fixture. And I would always say prioritise the quality of fixtures that players have got over the form that they're in, right? And I would always say that Maddison, he seems to be at the heart of everything Spurs do from an attacking perspective. Recently, he might not have been getting on the end of chances or being the actual assister to a goal, but he's always there creating, you know, the pass to the assist or whatever. So it's only a matter of time before he gets an attacking return again. And of course, he's just nailed on to starts for Spurs, right? And he doesn't take the penalties, but he will take some of their free kicks. And I think when you've got a player that is so good at set pieces like Maddison is, there's always a chance of him getting an attacking return from something like that. And when you look at his attacking returns compared to starts, what's that, 12 attacking returns from 16 starts? It's very, very decent. And I'd say he's definitely one of the best midfielders when you look at Game Week 29 in isolation. You know, if you're looking to bring a player in, that you know, for one that doesn't have a fixture in 29, Maddison's a good option. And likewise, if you're on your free hit, I think he's a good pick too. We're going to go team by team then, and Aston Villa next. And of course, my top option from Aston Villa is Ollie Watkins. Currently, the top scoring player in the whole of the FPL game, right? And if you don't have him already, he should be in your team. Like, no doubt in my mind, he is, well, behind Haaland, who doesn't have a fixture in Game Week 29. He's the best striker in the game, right? He's the top player for draft time expected points in Game Week 29. So, of course, he is a captaincy option, right? No doubt in my mind he's a captaincy option. But he doesn't take the Villa pens, which is the only thing that kind of puts me off setting him as captain. But you can't really argue with the returns he's got, right? 31 attacking returns from 27 starts this season. It's absolutely insane. But somehow he's got 15 assists from only 3.5 expected assists, which is just crazy. But yeah, he's obviously a fantastic option. The only question mark is, do you captain him? Definitely think Douglas Luiz is my second favourite Villa player. There is another one in Leon Bailey, but we'll get to him in a second. Douglas Luiz is definitely my second favourite. I think just because he's just nailed on to start, you're not going to worry about his minutes. He's definitely going to be in the team, of course, if he's not injured. He plays 90 minutes every game, and he takes the penalties. And from open play, right, he's definitely a goal-scoring midfielder now. He seems to be getting in the box whenever he's given an opportunity to, which, yeah, I really, really like him as a player. Yeah, just the fact he's on penalties, like I said with Son, it's just another string to his bow. And even if Villa don't play well against West Ham, there's always a chance he's going to score because he takes the penalties. All they need to do is win a pen for him to take, right? One thing I'd also say about Douglas Luiz is he is excellent for bonus points when he does return. Because of all the other things he does during a game, he accumulates bonus points in FPL, and he gets really good bonus points when he gets an attack and return, basically. He's just one of the best players at that price point as well. You know, even if I bought him in isolation for Game Week 29, I wouldn't be worried about earning him for future game weeks. When you look at the level of attacking returns he's got, what's that, 14 from 26 starts? I wouldn't be worried about keeping him beyond Game Week 29 either. I just think he's a great option, and you don't have to worry about him. He's just this kind of set and forget player. The fact he's nailed, on pens, and plays 90. I'd probably say Bailey is my third favourite Villa asset. When you look at the stats and the numbers he's put up for the number of games that he's played, it's fantastic. I mean, what's that? 17 attacking returns from 14 starts and 0.68 expected returns per 90. When you filter by all the players sub 6 million, I'm pretty sure that's the best of any player at this price point. The obvious downside to Bailey is he's got Diaby as competition. You know, Diaby waiting in the wings as a top-class player in his own right. So the minutes across the season are going to be shared. But right now, looking at game week 29 in isolation, Emery is definitely favouring Bailey over Diaby in the starting 11. Surely that's got to make Bailey a good option, right? And I'd say definitely Watkins and Douglas Luiz I would prefer. But my third favourite Villa asset is probably Leon Bailey, just because I don't really back them to keep clean sheets at the moment. They all seem to be a bit makeshift, injuries here, there and everywhere in their defence. They seem to concede pretty much every game. It's just they're so good from a goal scoring perspective. They seem to be able to win them all, and Leon Bailey's definitely involved in all of that. When you look, when you look at his stats compared to the starts he's made, it's fantastic. He's currently favoured over Diaby, so I think you take your chances and go for him. Now, I wax lyrical all the time about Ivan Toney. You probably abuse me in the comments for it from this video, but I mean, I think the guy's a great option for game week 29, right? His fixture against Burnley, yes, the expected points are not amazing according to draft time, just with his recent form, but I don't think that matters, you know. I think he's definitely an outside chance of captaincy as well, an outside shout. If you're certainly looking to chase rank, I think he's a good option. You know, Burnley are pretty hopeless defensively. He's got decent attacking, you know, returns for the starts he's made. He's in good form. He just hasn't been getting the chances, you know. I think he's one of the best forwards in the league. He's now to start for Brentford, as we know. Takes their penalties. One thing that might be in doubt is whether he takes the free kicks, because Mbumo, I'm pretty sure I saw a picture of him in training, so Mbumo could be back. But I don't think he's pickable for game week 29, just because he's not on penalties, right? You know, the power that Mbumo had at the start of the season was mainly because he was on penalties. And when you think of the three captain options that I mentioned, right? Watkins, Son, and Toney. Toney definitely has the best fixture of the three players. So you gotta think he's worth a shout. You know, regardless of whether you're going to captain him or not, I don't think it really matters. If you're on your free hit, I think he's a great option and pretty much a shoe-in for your team. And even if you're not, I think he's a sensible transfer in, you know. He's now to start, on penalties, plays 90 minutes every game, Brentford's talisman, ticks all the boxes, you name it, right? And he's just a safe, set and forget option. I really like him. Now, is Jared Bowen a captaincy shout as well? I think probably not, but he is a definite option for your team, right? I think against Villa, the fixture's just a little bit too difficult to be captaining him, especially as he doesn't take the penalties. But he still definitely looks to be a good option again. You know, looks to be back in form for West Ham. Absolutely nailed to start. Plays 90 minutes every game, having one of his best seasons of his career. I think he's overtaken his goal scoring from previous seasons already. I think he got 10 goals and 10 assists a couple of seasons ago. So obviously he's already overtaken that from a goal scoring perspective. His goals, I don't know, it's like a curse or whatever, but they only seem to come when Paqueta's in the team or Paqueta's in the team. But he is currently, so yeah, should do okay in game week 29. And historically, right, it's another one similar to Son where he massively overperforms his XG, but that's a historical thing for Bowen because he's such an elite finisher. So I wouldn't let that worry me and think, oh, his attacking returns are going to drop off eventually because they're above his XG. That's not really going to happen with Bowen because we've seen him do that season on season. Not quite a captain option, I don't think, but if you don't have him already, I'd definitely look to get him in my team. And finally, Morris. He ticks all the boxes again, similar to quite a lot of these players I've spoken about, right? Now to start for their respective teams, takes the penalties, plays 90 minutes, which means even if they don't play well, Luton, he's always got a chance of scoring a goal. And one thing I'd say about Morris, every defence I've seen him come up against, yes, he doesn't necessarily score in every game, but he gives defenders a right handful with just how he is physically. And if you need to hold him, I wouldn't be too worried about it because at 5.1 million, he's cheap enough. You could just bench him for when the fixtures get tough or you don't want to play him. You know, he's only, what, 0.6 million more than the minimum striker price. Yeah, I really like him as an option. Why not? The final player I wanted to talk about is Muniz of Fulham. Hopefully I've pronounced that correctly. I think he's a really nice option as well. At 4.5 million, right? He could be just a nice long-term hold to just have on your bench for when you need him, particularly if you need a bit of cash to squeeze Mo Salah back into your team, which you might need in game week 30 and 31, right? I think he's a really nice option to enable that. Spurs, yes, on paper, you might think that's a tough fixture, but actually they're not that great defensively, like I said when going through Doggy. And when you look at his odds, 29% of scoring a goal, 10% of getting an assist, 36% chance for goal involvement. It's not too bad. I do really like him as an option. And I know Willian at the moment, I believe, is the designated Fulham penalty taker, but given this guy's goal scoring form, could he be taking them away from Willian? I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there's been a Fulham penalty where Muniz and Willian have both been on the pitch to know who takes them. So yeah, just an interesting one to bear in mind. But yeah, as a long-term option, he's probably the best 4.5 million striker. And you just have him on your bench when you don't want to start him. All right, and that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. I think it's relevant whether you're on your free hit or not, right? Because you're going to be looking for players to bring in on a free transfer, and you're going to be looking for the best option if you're on your free hit. So I think this video kind of summarizes my favorite players going into game week 29. Like I said, if you enjoyed it, please leave me a like rating. Let me know in the comments who you're going to captain. That's a really big decision, and I'll probably get onto that in future game week videos. You can subscribe to the Goal and Goal channel, which should be just here, if you want to see more videos from me, and I'll see you in my next one.